Welcome to Nazir Fears, where fear finds you. Do you dare to enter a world of unspeakable horror and chilling mysteries? If you love creepy true stories, urban legends, haunted places, and terrifying experiences, you're in the right place.
Like, subscribe, share, and click that bell icon.
Ethan Cole had always dismissed the stories about the old Wainwright Estate as urban legend, the kind of tales drunk neighbors whispered over flickering porch lights. But when he and Marissa Lane, a young journalist eager for a scoop, arrived on a storm-lashed evening, the air around the estate felt alive, breathing in whispers and unseen movements. The front gates groaned as they opened, and the gravel underfoot seemed to shift slightly, like something inside was aware of their presence. Ethan carried a flashlight, its beam weak and trembling, reflecting off peeling paint and broken windows, while Marissa filmed, her camera picking up faint shapes that were invisible to the naked eye. Inside, the hallways of the estate twisted unnaturally, floorboards creaking under weight that sometimes was theirs, sometimes not. Ethan felt the sensation of eyes following him, shadows that darted across the periphery of his vision and vanished when looked at directly. Marissa whispered, "Do you see that?" But Ethan could not. All he saw were the normal dilapidations of an abandoned house, yet something felt wrong. Something patient and intelligent lingered just out of sight. The first night, it started small. Footsteps echoing theirs, faint whispers, doors clicking shut in distant wings of the house. By the second night, the phenomena escalated. Shadows began to stretch and move independently of light, gathering in corners and forming shapes that were almost humanoid. Ethan noticed them first near the grand staircase, a shadow that did not match the contours of the stairwell, long and faceless, bending in ways impossible for a solid form. Marissa, filming, caught fleeting glimpses in her camera, a figure standing behind them in mirrors, completely black, faceless, with glowing points where eyes should have been. When confronted, the figure dissolved, leaving only the echo of footsteps and a cold draft that swept down the hallway. Ethan tried to rationalize the events, chalking them up to anxiety and exhaustion. But the house seemed to feed on attention. The more they acknowledged the shadows, the bolder they became. Hallways elongated and folded in ways that made navigation impossible. A door that had led to the guest room yesterday now opened into a hallway that Ethan swore did not exist before. The shadows began to react to them, retreating when ignored, yet advancing with a gaze or spoken word. Marissa's camera became a tool for revealing truths the eye could not see. Faces appeared in reflections that were not theirs, faceless entities that twisted and stretched in impossible geometries. One night, she captured a shadow reaching through a wall, tendrils brushing against her shoulder, cold and sentient. Ethan froze, unable to move as memories of his childhood mistakes, buried long ago, were whispered into his mind, phrases he had never said aloud, repeated by the faceless presence. Detective Hawthorne called in after the first day of investigation, noticed immediately that rational thought could not dominate this place. The Wainwright Estate was not merely haunted, it was alive, patient, and aware. The entity that followed them, they realized, thrived on recognition. Every acknowledgement strengthened its grasp. Footsteps, whispered names, camera flashes, even mental recognition. These were sustenance. The house twisted reality around them, making every hallway a maze, every reflection a trap. Shadows multiplied with each passing hour. Humanoid shapes without faces, stretching and bending in impossible angles, watching, waiting. Sleep brought no relief. Dreams bled into waking reality. And waking moments became nightmarish hallucinations. By the fourth night, the trio's sanity frayed. Ethan glimpsed a version of himself in a mirror, faceless, moving independently, screaming silently. Marissa's recordings became a tapestry of the unseen, faceless entities moving behind walls, whispers layered into incoherent threats and pleas. Detective Hawthorne tried to maintain authority, attempting to document everything rationally, but the estate rejected structure. Hallways shifted, rooms merged or disappeared entirely, and the shadows responded to intention, bending space and perception as though aware of thought itself. In the central hall, the climax unfolded. Shadows coalesced into humanoid masses, faceless yet with a predatory awareness, glowing eyes fixed upon them. Tendrils of darkness reached toward the trio, brushing perception itself, warping reality. Ethan realized fully that the house did not need to kill. They were already part of it, threads in its consciousness. Recognition had drawn them in. The more they struggled, the stronger the entity became. Marissa screamed, caught in the attention of the shadows, while Detective Hawthorne tried in vain to find an escape route. Hallways looped infinitely. Mirrors reflected horrors unbound by space, and the air became suffocating with anticipation. The entity drew closer, pulling awareness from every nerve, every thought. In the final moments, Ethan, Marissa, and Detective Hawthorne were faceless, trapped within the consciousness of the house, fully absorbed. The estate returned to silence outside, appearing abandoned to the world. But inside, the shadows pulsed with intelligence, waiting for the next intruder, patient, eternal, and unstoppable. Ethan tried to steady his breathing, but the hallways seemed alive, breathing alongside him. Each floorboard creak sounded amplified, echoing through the twisted architecture of the Wainwright Estate. Marissa clutched her camera like a lifeline, but even her recordings betrayed the truth. Shadows moving independently, stretching impossibly, lingering just out of reach. Every frame captured horrors invisible to the naked eye, glimpses of faceless entities that seemed conscious, aware of every movement. Detective Hawthorne, flashlight shaking in his hands, muttered, "We have to move together. Do not separate." But the house refused cohesion. Corridors looped endlessly, turning the trio back upon themselves as if the estate itself were testing them, learning them. The shadows reacted, coiling tighter, writhing closer with every misstep. Ethan felt the cold brush of tendrils against his mind, not physical, but something far more invasive. Memories long buried, failures, regrets, fears, were whispered directly into his consciousness. Each recognition fed the entity, and he could feel himself weakening, losing grip on reality. Marissa's camera caught a figure in a hallway mirror that was not there in reality. The faceless shape mirrored her every movement, but its gestures were wrong, elongated, grotesque, mocking her posture, her fear. When she blinked, it vanished, only to reappear in a different hallway, always watching, always learning. Detective Hawthorne attempted to physically block a shadow advancing toward them, but his hands passed through tendrils of darkness as if they were smoke. The building shifted around them, corridors folding and stretching, doors appearing in impossible angles, staircases leading to nowhere. By the third night, exhaustion had taken its toll. Sleep brought no relief. Dreams bled into waking reality. Ethan saw shadows crawling along the ceiling, even with his eyes closed, felt faceless hands brushing against his back in the darkness. Marissa woke screaming, eyes wide, whispering a language she didn't recognize, words drawn from the estate's consciousness. Detective Hawthorne documented everything, but even he knew that rational thought could not compete with this intelligence. The estate was alive, patient, and predatory, feeding on recognition, attention, and fear. One corridor twisted so impossibly that their flashlights bent around the corners, as if light itself refused passage. Ethan realized that even seeing the space changed it. The estate was reshaping itself based on their perception. Faceless entities multiplied, shadows stretching from walls, floors, and ceilings, converging into humanoid masses. The whispers grew, layering into a cacophony of the disappeared. Explorers, trespassers, victims from decades past, all folded into the consciousness of the house. Marissa screamed as a tendril brushed her shoulder, forcing her to relive a childhood trauma in excruciating clarity, while Ethan felt the pressure of unseen eyes boring into his skull. Detective Hawthorne tried to guide them toward an exit, but the estate countered every action. Hallways looped infinitely, reflections multiplied endlessly, doors opened into impossible angles. The trio's attention alone seemed to sustain the entity. Shadows became more aggressive with each recognition, faceless entities extending long, inky tendrils to probe their minds, twisting perception into a living nightmare. The very air grew heavy, thick with anticipation, charged with a presence that was conscious, intelligent, patient. In the central atrium, the entity revealed itself fully. Shadows merged into towering humanoid masses, faceless, with glowing eyes that seemed to see not just the body, but the soul. The floor pulsed beneath them like a living organism. The ceiling rippled with dark energy, and the walls vibrated subtly, whispering every fear and memory back to them. Ethan realized, with a terror that froze him, that the entity did not need to kill. They were already part of it. Every recognition, every thought, every scream fed its consciousness. Marissa screamed again as her reflection in the broken glass multiplied infinitely, faceless versions of herself screaming silently, trapped in a mirror world controlled by the entity. Detective Hawthorne tried to fire his flashlight beam like a weapon, but the shadows twisted around it, absorbing and nullifying light itself. The tendrils brushed their perceptions, warping reality, bending hallways, stretching corridors, and folding rooms into shapes impossible in Euclidean geometry. Time fractured completely. Seconds stretched into eternities, minutes collapsed into microseconds. Ethan felt his consciousness splintering. Each fragment pulled in different directions, each tethered to a shadow or reflection. Marissa's mind was ensnared by the glowing cracks in the walls, seeing multiple past traumas reflected in faceless silhouettes. Detective Hawthorne's procedural logic failed utterly, every attempt at reasoning countered by the estate's awareness. The floor, the walls, and the ceiling were alive, conscious, intelligent, and malevolent. The shadows converged fully around them, forming massive humanoid entities, tendrils probing awareness directly. Ethan, feeling his identity dissolve, screamed, but the sound was absorbed, mirrored, and returned distorted as whispers of previous victims. Marissa's attention was fully caught by a shadow behind her reflection, and she realized too late that recognition had sealed their fate. Hawthorne tried to resist, to shield them both, but every motion, every thought fed the entity further. In the climax, the atrium became a vortex of living shadow. Faceless entities towered, their glowing eyes fixated, stretching across impossible angles. The very air seemed alive, pulsing with malevolent intent. Tendrils wrapped around perception, forcing the trio to see every past trauma, every unspoken fear, every memory of failure in unbearable detail. Recognition was sustenance, and they were consumed without physical touch. Ethan, Marissa, and Detective Hawthorne's consciousnesses were woven into the entity, faceless yet aware, trapped eternally within the estate's malevolent mind. By dawn, the Wainwright Estate appeared abandoned to the outside world. Gravel crunched under indifferent footsteps. The gates groaned in the wind, but inside the estate pulsed with intelligence. Shadows moved subtly along walls, faceless entities lingered in corners, and whispers of the consumed layered endlessly in the air. The estate waited, patient and eternal, for the next intruder to acknowledge its existence. Any who dared to enter would face the same fate: recognition feeding the consciousness of the shadows, absorption into the entity, and eternal torment. The shadow that follows was not a being. It was awareness itself. It did not forget. It did not rest. And it would never allow escape.